former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, with 5 days to go before the election. This is stunning. This tells me that the FBI rank and file, told by the Justice Department to stand down, said no because they believe at every level high crimes were committed.
Well, look, I think that it is clear. I've been working on my next newsletter, which I'm tentatively entitling The Cesspool, because I think the scale of corruption, including the elite media, I mean, when a New York Times or a Washington Post or an ABC or a CBS refuses to cover absolute examples of corruption, they become accomplices. Now, they're complicit in the corrupting of America because they refuse to tell the American people the truth. And the truth is, as you know, that the IRS has an entire agency in Dallas that is reviewing whether or not to decide that the Clinton Foundation loses its status as a tax-deductible foundation. The truth is that there are ongoing FBI investigations into the corruption of the Clinton Foundation and the abuse of office by Hillary Clinton on behalf of enriching herself and her husband. The truth is that the 650,000 emails are that Huma Abedin had on a computer are by definition a felony. I mean, if you go down this list and you just took the law and you said, what if we assumed that the law actually applied? That you would find that there's evidence after evidence. There are 20 or 30 people who go to jail. Not just Hillary Clinton, not just Bill Clinton, not just Huma Abedin, not just Cheryl Mills, not just John Podesta. But again, person after person after person. And that's before you get into the degree of obstruction of justice, which is astonishing. I mean, the very fact that we're even discussing whether or not deleting 33,000 emails from an account that was commingled with government documents with no supervision, whether or not that's illegal, that's clearly a felony. I mean, Hillary Clinton has committed so many felonies in this process, and her staff has committed so many felonies, and she and Bill have been engaged in a criminal enterprise, which is precisely like one of the New York crime families. They deliberately exploited public office for the purpose of getting very wealthy people, many of them foreigners, some of them dictatorships overseas, to corrupt the system. And now that I began to finally get a grip on how gigantic this is, I've really been driven back to Colleen McCullough, who wrote The Thornbirds and wrote a 7-volume series of novels about the collapse of the Roman Republic. And when you go back, starting with The First Man in Rome, and you look at how foreign money corrupted the Roman Republic, and she covered it brilliantly. It's one of the most brilliant series I've ever read. And then you apply it directly to Doug Band's memo. You begin to realize these people were engaged in selling America. I mean, that's what they were doing. They were selling America for the purpose of personal enrichment. And it is astonishing that the New York Times and the Washington Post and the others are co-conspirators in trying to keep the American people from knowing the truth.
You know what's amazing when you look at the numbers here? There's a story. We're actually going to show a video on Hannity tonight that was put together by my radio, and Lauren in particular works on my radio show. And, there's this one particular guy that worked in the Navy. He was on a submarine, and this one particular guy took 6 pictures in the submarine. He has a wife and children, and he's going to jail, and he has 1 year in jail for taking 6 pictures in a submarine because it was not secure. It was top secret. We know as it relates to the Clintons, 2,093 emails, State Department emails, classified as confidential or secret, were discovered so far. 193 emails, 81 separate email conversations, classified at the time, ranging from confidential to top secret to the highest level, which is special access program. 68 of the 81 email chains remain classified today. 8 were top secret, 37 secret, 36 confidential, 7 special access programs, 3 were sensitive compartmentalized information, 36 were not for releasing to foreign governments. That means if this is right, and it's a 99% certainty that 5 foreign intelligence agencies hacked them, that means our methods, our top security clearances, our people that are out in the field were likely compromised. I mean, the level of damage here is incalculable.
Well, that's right. And remember, that's why part of what makes this so hard to piece together is you have a national security component, which is just totally outrageous. I mean, every person who has ever served in the military, the Central Intelligence Agency, the State Department, the National Security Agency, all of these people know that what she did on the national security front, in and of itself, is absolutely, totally intolerable, unpatriotic, undermining America, putting Americans at risk, and helping our enemies. Now, I don't think she did it deliberately. I'm not suggesting that she set out to help our enemies, but the net effect of her behavior made life a heck of a lot easier for our enemies because she was, as you point out, we now finally have been told, at least 5 major countries probably hacked into her account. Well, this is just, and it's not because they're that clever, it's because she was that stupid. It's almost mind-boggling to imagine that we have this much corruption, this much scandal, this much total lack of obeying the law, all wrapped up in a presidential candidate.
There are so many people. Uma Abedin signed a separation agreement when she left the State Department saying under the penalty of law that she had handed over all of the emails, all materials that she had as somebody that worked for Hillary in that capacity. Now she is facing, wouldn't she be facing on every single one of these emails a potential felony? Isn't she potentially facing?
The next time you had Rudy on, since he's a prosecuting attorney and I'm just a historian, I would be very curious.
Yeah, you're just a minor historian, former Speaker of the House, brought Republicans to power for the first time in 40 years. You're not. Listen, you're lower than a talk show host. That's all there is to it.
I know. Listen, I am a mere shadow compared to your greatness. But anyway, my point was, look, he's a professional prosecutor. He did this for a living and was very, very good at it. I would be very curious. I know he thinks that there are 8 or 10 or 12 different statutes that were violated, but I'd be curious if he was putting a case together, how many counts would he have? I mean,
I know the answer to your question because I haven't talked to him since this, but he'll be on Hannity tonight. And he was up to 16 plus felony investigations when you start adding conspiracy and actual violations of the law. Look, this is what nobody seems to understand. The mishandling. If you're reckless in your handling of classified materials, that is in and of itself a crime. If you destroy classified materials, that is a crime. They took a hammer to 13 electronic devices, phones, and Blackberries and busted them up with a hammer. They bleach bit 33,000 emails, pretty much the equivalent of acid washing them away, as Trey Gowdy said, so God couldn't find them.
Well, but what I want you to ask him, you can say I asked you because I'm not smart enough to know the answer. If he were putting together a prosecution case to take to a jury, how many of these would turn into a count? Is each deletion a count, or is the act of deletion one count for all 32,000?
What they'd end up doing, probably end up getting concurrent sentences on the whole deal. All right, let me ask you before we go. And by the way, Newt's new book is now a bestseller, and tomorrow you're going to be at Anderson's bookshop in, I believe, Illinois, correct?
Yeah, Clifton and I'll be at Anderson's bookstore in Napierville, just past suburb of Chicago, tomorrow night at 7.
Okay.
And then we're both going to be at the La Crosse Barnes & Noble at 2 o'clock on Saturday. And frankly, because of the many friends you have and the many listeners you have, every one of our signings has been amazing. And I think we're also going to try to work it out so I think you're
at your 10th reprinting, which is a pretty staggering number. That's terrific.
Very encouraging.
How does this all impact the election in the time we have left?
Well, I'd be much more confident if the elite media were actually willing to cover it. But my sense is every time you turn around, they're losing ground. I was in southwest Missouri 2 days ago. Clearly Trump is gaining and widening his margin. I was in Denver yesterday. That state's now even. He was down 4 or 5 2 weeks ago. I'm out here now in Las Vegas. I'll have a better sense later on today about how it's going here. I'll be in Chicago tomorrow. Nobody expects him to carry Illinois, but I think he's gaining ground virtually everywhere. And as you and I have discussed, part of what this means is he starts putting states into play that nobody expected. I think they're down to a 3-point margin in Michigan. And so I think every time we turn around, there are new opportunities for him to find more votes. The report out of New Hampshire was very positive. Kelly Ayotte, I think, is up by 6.
He's up by 6, and he's up by 1. No, there's one poll that has him tied today, and one poll in New Hampshire that has Trump up by 1. That's the WBUR poll. Look, I'll tell you where my head is on this. With just 5 days to go, I don't see 270 yet on paper, and you keep telling me I don't need to see it.
Well, I mean, it'd be nice for you to see it, but my point is, if he keeps gaining momentum at this rate, the 270 will show up. It just may not be the places people expected. I mean, I looked at one analysis today that lists Ohio is still undecided. I think he's up 6 points in Ohio. I talked to Rob Portman yesterday. Senator Portman is absolutely confident he's going to win probably by 12 to 15, and Trump's going to win by 6 to 8. And yet the media keeps listing Ohio as so when they tell you how many electoral votes Trump has, they don't count Ohio.
I've got to run, but I'm
crazy.
more worried about Florida as usual. Florida is the biggest pain. My adopted state now is the biggest pain in my neck. You know what? There's all these New Yorkers and New Jersey people move down there and they bring their bad liberal policies with them.
No.
That's part of the problem.
The part of Florida, I just talked to Matt Towery, who knows Florida intimately. The place you should worry about is where you go, because people like Neil Bortz have decided they're never Trumpers. We are weaker in Southwest Florida than we should be. And if I were putting resources in, I'd put them into Southwest Florida, Fort Myers, and Naples, because we have a number of our friends who still don't get it, that putting Hillary Clinton as the most corrupt candidate in American history in the White House.
I'll go down there. I'm going to hold Neil Bortz up by his feet until he gives in. So I'll take care of that myself.
There you go.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.